Good morning and welcome to the GPE webinar series. This series started in the year 2016, and since then we've had a full calendar going into this year 2017. First of all, allow me to thank you all for joining us today. The webinar session is being live streamed on your YouTube channel in English and French, as well as...
I'm sorry, excuse me. Could you please ask everybody to turn off their mic, because this is the interpreter's booth and we do not understand, we cannot hear anything. We are hearing all the lines together. Thank you.
All right, sorry, the persons who are on the line, could you please mute your microphones?
I did mute everyone. Now they are muted.
Yes, so we have this WebEx going on, and we have multiple audio channels running. The interpreters cannot hear us. Can you please mute them? Not the interpreters, but okay. Thank you.
When is the conference ready, please?
I don't have it right in front of me.
Is that in English or which language?
English, DMS, GPE,
GPE,
webinar. Yes.
Sure, we'll meet the WebEx for
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining us today. The webinar session is being live streamed, as you are aware, on our YouTube channel in English and French and WebEx. So please, going forward, feel free to share the links with your network or share on social media. Today, we will talk about the Data Must Speak initiative, a very important initiative to make sure that evidence and data feed into education policy and practice. And we have a wonderful panel of experts and hope to have a fruitful discussion and exchange of experience. Remember that these webinars are intended to be interactive experiences where the audience, yourself, will interact with the different panelists in a discussion on the topics that we'll be talking about. I'm here at the GP Secretariat in Washington, D.C., joined by my colleagues. And just to give a big shout out to the team that has been working on this webinar, we've got Chandrani Rai, Victoria Egbetayo, Umed Partov, Farid Tanai, Marin Nyingi, and Sirtaj Kaur, working on this, as well as Livia Barton. And we have presenters joining us online from New York, Kathmandu, Manila, and Lusaka. It is a great pleasure, therefore, to introduce to you, first of all, Mr. Dexter Pante, the Chief of the School Effectiveness Division of the Ministry of Education of the Republic of the Philippines, Mr. Bupe Musonda, a Senior Statistician at the Ministry of General Education of the Republic of Zambia, Mr. Vaikunta Prashat Aryal, Chief of the Planning Division, Ministry of Education of Nepal, and Mr. Shankar Thapa, Deputy Director, Head of EMA Section, and Undersecretary of the Department of Education, also of the Republic of Nepal. And finally, we've got with us Mr. Daniel Kelly, joining us from New York, Education Consultant at UNICEF. As to the webinar series, this is part of our GP's Knowledge and Good Practice Exchange Initiative, which came about as an important response to GP partner countries requesting additional opportunities for the exchange of knowledge that can inform policies and practices at the country levels. In addition, we believe that it gives practitioners the opportunity to partake in a continuous and sustainable practice of knowledge exchange between partner countries, which in turn, to our belief, will strengthen and fulfill the national and global objectives of the Global Partnership for Education. While choosing topics for the webinars, we try to balance between different demands for knowledge and have, for example, webinars on system strengthening, equity in education, learning, inclusion, partnership building, as well as the process of translating global commitments, such as Sustainable Development Goal number 4, into country-level targeted financing objectives as some of our priority issues. In addition to all of this, GP leverages these knowledge exchange sessions as visibility tools, rather to shine light on its work and the very important contributions of its partner countries as we go forward toward fulfilling the promises of Sustainable Development Goal 4, quality education for all and lifelong learning, and our own results framework, which you can all find online on GP's Data and Results webpage. On this very same topic of Data Must Speak, we already had a very successful seminar in May with case studies from Togo and Madagascar, focused more on countries which have as their administrative language French, And the objective of today's session is to bring in new perspectives, mainly from countries where the English language is used rather than the French language in general, and experiences from countries such as Zambia, Philippines, and Nepal. And I can say that they're represented by a phenomenal group of panelists, which I have already announced. In particular, in this webinar, we will be discussing the strengthening of education systems through data management and analysis, as we've mentioned before. And we'll hear the experience of UNICEF on the GPE-funded Data Must Speak initiative, and speak with panelists from the countries already mentioned. So now, before I turn it over to the first presenter, I would like to request for your attention a few housekeeping notes. The first I've already mentioned. Please do mute your microphones, both on your phones and your computers, to cut out background noises. If you do not, it will be very difficult for the interpreters to do their work, because they're diligently translating from English to French. And if you're facing connection issues, please let us know via email at the email address webinars@globalpartnership.org. That is webinars without any points, without any other reading signs, webinars@globalpartnership.org. If you've got any questions, and as we said, this is intended to be an interactive session, you can send those questions either to that email address, and you can also send them in the chat function of YouTube or WebEx if you use that application. All right, without further ado, and finally, just to say that in 2 weeks, we'll be sharing the recording of this session with all the documentation. And all of you that have registered for this session will receive that documentation to your email addresses. Now then, really without further ado, I will pass on the floor to Mr. Daniel Kelly, who joins us from New York, to give us an introduction into the objectives, the principles, and some of the activities that have been developed under the Data Must Speak initiative. Daniel, are you there?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Hello? We can hear you very well.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Moritz. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon and good evening, especially to those of you in the Philippines. My presentation is really to just give a brief overview of the Data Must Speak project and to leave as much time to the countries to explore how they have been implementing. So Data Must Speak is a GPE, GRA project. And if we can just go to the first slide, it was set up to address a number of key issues in education, issues that you're very familiar with, that education is still represented by a significant degree of inequality, where the richest and the most educated children receive a disproportionate amount of public funding. We see in many countries that there's a lack of accountability, where parents or communities don't have a direct avenue to engage with schools or teachers directly, and it's through the regular governmental processes, so a longer route of accountability in many countries. We see that approximately 120 children in the world are still excluded from being in school, and that overall there is still a huge number of children, including those that are in school, who are not learning the basic numeracy and literacy skills. So in response to these very large issues, the Data Must Speak project began in 2014, and it's very much a technical assistance project with the aim of enhancing the use of data at all levels of an education system, enhancing the use of data to improve the governance of the management of the education systems, but also to enhance the level of social accountability through stronger citizen engagement and enhance transparency and accountability towards the schooling system. The third element is that overall the project would work on improving the global knowledge regarding what works or what doesn't work in reference to community engagement and the use of data for equity and learning. The project is a multi-country project, and it has a focus on 5 countries in particular. They are Togo, Zambia, Madagascar, Nepal, and the Philippines. In addition to these 5 countries, there's also been remote support to Peru on a pilot utilizing mobile phones and SMS. In addition, there's quite a long waiting list of countries, notably Tanzania, Indonesia, Timor-Leste, DRC, Cote d'Ivoire, which we hope to expand to in future. The project is really, like I said, technical assistance, and that technical assistance is provided by UNICEF through the headquarters, the regional offices, and the country offices, and UNESCO IIP pulled at Dakar for the countries in Africa. The project is only possible thanks to the financial support provided by the GPE, the Hewlett Foundation, and UNICEF through its Norwegian thematic funds and the country office funds. The project really aims to build synergies at the country level, working with the education sector plans, but also any large-scale development partner projects. Because as it's a technical assistance project, it's crucial that it works with the larger funded projects to expand throughout the country. The approach is really one of that the data must be set free. The data that the ministries of education and the government are already collecting is that this data be used to make better decisions, to make evidence-based decisions, and also to share that data with the communities to give them greater knowledge and therefore power to hold schools accountable. Finally, to build knowledge based on these initiatives around equitable districts and empower communities. The project is guided by a series of principles, number one of which is really country ownership. Whether a country engages in the project at all or how it engages is really down to the government and to the partners in the country. We begin our work in country with an initial workshop where all the key partners are together and we agree with them whether they want to engage in data must speak and how that would look. So it's very much an a la carte approach. You will see very different examples of project implementation in the different countries today. And in addition to this is a key component of sustainability. So the project focuses on setting free the data that exists. It's not about new data collection. It's not about piloting small-scale data collection initiatives. It's really working with the government on making better sustainable use of the data they have. Finally, there's a strong learning by doing component where in every country we work with the government teams on every level of implementation. So I'm just very briefly going to talk about some of the examples of the work that is being done in different countries. We'll go into greater detail. For
Could
example,
you please ask people to turn off their microphone, please? We have some noise. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, can we just reiterate the request for muting your microphones if you've joined this webinar session, because for the interpreter it's very difficult to hear with any background noise. Thank you, and apologies for the interruption, Daniel. Daniel, please continue, and apologies for the interruption.
You can hear, yeah?
Very well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So just briefly, some examples of the work on data must speak in terms of supporting more equitable systems. We're working with the Ministry of Education, the Department of Education, and other key stakeholders. We have a dialogue about how we can support them in targeting the most disadvantaged schools. So we try to use the data that is already available in those countries. So can we move on? Yeah, thank you. And in some countries, that data is used to develop district, schools, provincial profiles where schools or districts are highlighted as being in need on basic education indicators. I think we'll see some good examples from Zambia and Nepal. And this in the Philippines, we've worked on a teacher hardship allowance to support better teachers going to the most needy schools. And Nepal will talk about their equity index, where the data was used to identify those districts in greatest need of support. The project also has a strong focus on empowering communities. So in the countries where this is a component of implementation, we engage with community actors, so parents, PTA members, head teachers, and ask them what they want to know about their school. And often it's a focus on learning or on how their school compares to other schools nearby in their district. So through this dialogue, we can move on to. We use the data that is again available in the country to come up with what we call community profiles, where communities can easily see how their school is doing. Can we please move forward on the slide? And so the school has information now.
Sorry, can I just reiterate the request to please mute your microphones if you have joined this webinar, please. Thank you.
Yeah, and so to develop community profiles that easily communicate to school communities, so parents and PTA members, how their school is performing, how children are learning in their schools compared to other schools nearby. And a third key area of implementation is to build knowledge on these initiatives, so building knowledge on how equitable systems can be built with enhanced data availability and how communities can be empowered through the sharing of information. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So the knowledge generation within Data Must Speak has two main components. Firstly, there is an evaluation plan of Data Must Speak as an entire project. Has the project been implemented as it was planned to be? Has it been successful in achieving the objectives it aimed to?
Daniel, are you still there?
Yes, I'm afraid I think the mics appear to automatically mute and unmute, and I think that may be what has happened with some of the other participants. Apologies. Can we go back to the previous slide to knowledge generation, please? Yes, thank you. So the first component is the evaluation of Data Must Speak, where we will evaluate how Data Must Speak has been implemented. Has it been implemented as we originally proposed? Has it been successful in achieving its objectives? What are the drivers behind any success? And what are the major challenges that are limiting success in developing equitable systems or empowering communities? There will also be a strong research component that will focus on, or that is focusing on, what about community engagement works to improve school performance. So at the macro level, using national data sets, we are analyzing where community empowerment or community engagement in education is having a positive impact on educational outcomes. Within the Data Must Speak project itself, at a more micro level, we are undertaking an impact evaluation in Zambia on the use of community profiles. So doing a randomized controlled trial of communities in Zambia, examining the impact or the link between this community profile feedback, this community engagement in education and educational outcomes. And so overall, the intended results of the Data Must Speak project are really to improve knowledge from unlocking this data that we know exists in so many countries, and this unlocked data to inform better decision making by governments at all levels, from the school level to the national level, better decision making informed by data, and also to strengthen the community agency. So really to empower communities and parents with information about their schools so that they can engage more effectively in the education of their children. With the ultimate results is so that the needy schools get the most support so that every child has a fair chance to learn. And the final slide is just a thank you, and thank you very much for your patience, and I give the floor to the country office and to you, Moritz. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel Kelly. That was a fantastic presentation. We will have an opportunity to ask questions about that and enter into a debate about that. But first of all, let me give the floor at this occasion to Mr. Bupe Musonda, who's joining us from the Republic of Zambia, Senior Statistics Officer of the Ministry of General Education. Mr. Musonda, are you with us?
Yes, good afternoon.
Fantastic. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Would like to share some experiences from Zambia with regard to the data must speak. Then move to the second slide, please. Second slide.
Yes, sorry, you will note there's like a 3, 4, 5 seconds time lag. Apologies for that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay, this is a brief context about the country. As you are aware, Zambia is a sub-Saharan African country, and has a population of slightly over 4 million learners, that is learners from grade 1 to grade 12. The country largely achieved the MDG2 around primary school enrollment. The country has over 8,800 primary schools dotted around the country and about 850 secondary schools. There are 2 ministries in charge of education, one for general education, that is from grade 1 to grade 7, and the other one is Ministry of Higher Education, responsible for higher and tertiary education. The Ministry of General Education has an Education Management Information System under the Directorate of Planning and Information. So the AMIS is a comprehensive database, and data is collected from the school on an annual basis. Next slide. Yeah. Prior to the Data Must Speak initiative, the Director of Planning and Information used to produce profiles, that is the school profiles, which were meant as a feedback mechanism. However, the process was discontinued in 2005. What happened is headquarters would print profiles for the whole schools in the whole country, and was quite a lot of work to do. So we decentralized to allow the districts to do the printing of their schools. But however, not all the districts were able to do that, hence this initiative was somehow suspended. So the original profiles were completely text-based and provided no examination or comparative data compared to the ones that we have embarked upon this time around. The Ministry of General Education identified the need to promote and improve usage of data at all levels of education. We have a lot of data that we collect through our annual school census, but the issue has been on the utilization, which hasn't been widely done. Improve evidence-based decision-making in planning and priority setting. Also to improve feedback loops at all the levels of education delivery, that is at school, community, district, and province. And also to enhance community engagement in school management and decision-making. Next slide. Thank you. What have we done up to date? So in 2015, the ministry, in collaboration with UNICEF, embarked on the Data Must Speak initiative. And in the same year, school profiles were designed collaboratively with teachers. We engaged teachers, the PTA members, the district staff were consulted, provincial, and the headquarters staff. So there was a collaborative approach to design of the school profiles. In 2016, the school profiles were printed, and the ministry distributed over 8,900 community school profiles to the schools across the country. And during 2016 and 17, provincial, district, and community simplified level profiles were developed and produced, in addition to the updated school profiles which are already in place. Move to the next slide. Can we get the, thank you. So this is a sample of the school profile. It's a 2-page document. Usually we print in color on A3, and the school profile provides schools with key selected indicators as a feedback mechanism from the annual school census. And it allows self-monitoring for schools. They're able to assess and monitor themselves just by looking at the indicators for that particular school. And the school profiles allow school management to identify needy and priority areas. So schools are able to see where they need to put more resources in order to perform better. And also the school profiles assist schools in the development of school improvement plans. So schools are developing the school improvement plans, and to do that they need to have data about their school so that their plans are well informed with data. So in addition, like I've mentioned, we have the community profiles. And this is a one-page document, usually on A4, and they are printed, a number of copies, multiple copies are printed. So the idea is to provide school communities with simplified information whereby the community can easily understand the information that is contained in the in the community profile. And it provides feedback from the annual school census and school examinations. So the community will have an opportunity to look and see how the school has performed with regard to the examinations for that particular school. And it allows self-monitoring for schools. Also, the community profiles, because of the simplified region in which they are, they allow low-literacy communities to understand their school in comparison to the district averages. And this is done over time, so they're able to see how they've been faring for the past 3 years, with regard to examinations. So that is a sample of the community profiles. It has some simplified graphical presentation so that the communities can easily understand. Provincial and district profiles, they have a same idea as with the community and the school profiles. They also contain selected key provincial and district indicators, and at a glance one can have a picture on how the province or district is performing in the delivery of education. They also show how well-resourced a province or district is, for example, with regard to pupil-teacher ratio. The pupil-teacher ratio can guide the allocation and distribution of teachers. So that information, the allocation of teachers is based on the pupil-teacher ratio, which would accurately help to effectively distribute. The education staff in 3 out of the 10 provinces, the country has 10 provinces. 3 of the 10 provinces, the ministry has trained staff in those provinces in collaboration with INSEAD in the interpretation and usage of the profile. So we have plans to train the other remaining provinces in the 3rd quarter of 2017. The first one, I think we are even planning to do one training for 3 provinces next week. You can move to the next slide. Yeah, we have some challenges though. The profile printing is not cheap. The printing here in Zambia is very expensive, especially when we bring in the element of color. Equally, distribution to schools is logistically difficult. We have schools spread out throughout the country, and if we misdistribute the school profiles together with the annual school census questionnaire, it becomes quite difficult logistically to distribute the profiles to the whole schools. Delayed printing and distribution, data reliability and usability is reduced. So information, once delayed, may lose the urgency and the need, and it becomes somehow stale. Then also the other challenge is matching of ECZ data and EMIS data. Not all schools have examination results. This is because not all the schools are examination centers. The limited understanding of how profiles are being used at school is also another challenge. Hence, the idea to engage the teachers and make them understand and appreciate the importance and how useful these school profiles can help them in their day-to-day management. Can move to the next slide. So what are our next steps and our future plans as a country? We are working on aligning ECZ and IMI scores to improve school matching. We've been in touch with the Examinations Council so that on the registration forms for the learners, they can include a field for EMIS number so that we are able to have a match. We can match the information so that all the schools, we can be able to report for them and know where the learners are coming from. So the way it is, learners move from one school to the center school. So when reporting there, we don't report on all the schools, only for those that are regarded as examination centers. So follow-up studies on comprehension and use of profiles, those are our plans we want to embark on. We are embarking on community training on the usage of the profiles so the communities can appreciate and understand and appreciate the profiles that are community-based. So there's a planned impact evaluation, Daniel alluded to this, on the Data Must Speak community. We are also planning to develop profiles for secondary schools because at the moment, we have developed for primary schools only. And also, further training and capacity building at all levels is required so that appreciation is provided at all the levels of our education delivery so that people can make use of the school profiles in their day-to-day management. Thank you very much, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Musonda, for this immensely interesting presentation. Thank you for joining us from Lusaka, and it's really interesting to see that among challenges you mentioned how are the data used at the school level, and I think that it will be really interesting in the follow-up discussion with the different participants in this webinar that we have a further discussion a little bit about that, and it would be fantastic if you obviously stay with us to address some of those questions. Thank you very much again, Mr. Musonda. At this point, we turn over to Nepal, where Mr. Vaikunta Prasad Aryal will present on the Nepali experience of Data Must Speak, followed by Mr. Shankar Thapa from the same country. Our colleagues in Kathmandu, are you connected?
Yeah, we are listening.
Excellent.
Are you hearing to us?
We can hear you very well.
Okay,
and
thank
we
you.
can see you very well as well. Mr. Vaikunta Prasad Aryal, the floor is yours. Whenever you feel like it, please feel free to commence with your presentation.
It's okay. Thank you very much. Good morning for you and good evening for us. To everybody. Now we are going to presenting from the Nepal case about Data Must Speak. We are jointly present this presentation. My colleague Shankar Thapa will support to me also. First of all, now I am going to express here about the school education sector context of Nepal. We have around the 7 decades history of education system, formal education system in Nepal after entering the democratic governance system. And while in 1951, during the time we have only 332 schools catering only 10,000 around students. But nowadays, we are in more than 35,000 schools in Nepal and catering 7.44 million students in the case of Nepal. And in 1970, there is the first education national plan developed in Nepal, and during the time there are altogether 4,000 schools, and we are visioning for the 2030 for the development, and by putting the aim by 2022, and during the time Nepal government has put the objectives to graduate the nation from least developed country to developing countries, and by 2030, and Nepal will be at the point of the middle income country. For that, we have to made a plan to increase the number of schools as per our necessity through the school mapping, and we are trying to make all students into the school by aiming the net interest rate also all 100%, and similarly the net enrollment rate also 100% for grade 1 to 5, and survival rate we are planning by 2023 to make all students for survival grade up to 5. And there is the huge increasement in the enrollment of the students, but still we have the disparities. Though the expansion of the education system, we have the disparities of the students. Here is in the figure, this is the map of Nepal, and here the northwestern part, this is the around the hilly or mountainous part of Nepal. There is a dark blue color. This is the high disparity country. Similarly, the middle southern part of the country, there is also the high disparities. So a large part, about 25% of all out of school children from age 5 to 16 years, they generally originate from the 6.5% of all districts in the Tarai region or southern part of the nation. And this is the average year of the schooling in comparison with the neighboring country of Nepal. And Nepal, within 10 years, the per child average year of the schooling is 6.74 in Nepal. and similarly the India is more than 7 years, and the Afghanistan is around 3 years only. And if we go through in Nepal, please, next, yeah. If we go through in Nepal here, and the Hill privileged children, they spent 9.48 years, average year in the schooling. Similarly, the Tarai marginal group is only around 2 years only for the schooling age. This shows that the disparities between or among the countries also, there is the high disparities even in marginal group and similarly privileged group, even in geographical location, Tarai and then hillside also. Now I am going to present here about the Data Must Speak initiative in Nepal. Here, whatever we did in Data Must Speak, in 2015 February, we conducted the kickoff workshop in Kathmandu, and at that time we developed the action plan for Data Must Speak and embedded with the sector's thematic working group, and then on monitoring and evaluation of the overall educational management information system. Then we analyzed the baseline, which is validated by a technical working group, and at that time we foreseen the activities such as we were planning at that time for the development of the equity index, similarly development of the school and district profiles, and application of the rapid pro to improve the data management and feedback, and inclusion of out-of-school children and children with disability in our educational management information system. And then at that time we planned to review our sector analysis for the education sector plan. Then we followed, we participated in the follow-up mission, which was held in 2015 at New York, and follow-up mission on the equity index and workshop on the school report card in Nepal 2016 we conducted. And in 2015, please, previous slide, please. Previous slide, please.
Can you go back?
It's okay. Yeah, just I am going to brief a short scenario about. During the earthquake time, we take the SMS-based for rapid pro collection of the information using such type of techniques for the SMS-based initiative. And at that time, the teachers were participated at that rapid pro information collection system, and we received the information during the time of earthquake, which was devastating, that affected most of the districts of the country, and there are more than 9,000 schools were totally damaged, and around 4 million children are directly or indirectly affected at that time. And next will be followed by my colleagues. Shankarji will continue this presentation.
Thank you, sir. With the aim of the SSRP and now currently the SSDP, the government of Nepal has developed the consolidated equity strategy with the aim to consolidate policy planning and the budgeting efforts to ensure equitable access, participation, and learning of all children in Nepal. Here, the Data Must Speak project is one of the opportunity to the Nepal to utilize in the consolidated equity, to implement the consolidated equity strategy. Basically, the consolidated equity strategy under the school education sector was approved in December 2014. It's the main objective of this strategy are to reduce the current disparities in access, participation, survival, and learning outcome for children in basic and secondary public education in Nepal. The strategy presented twofold approaches in meeting these objectives. Basically, One is the development of a composite educational equity index at district and sub-district level. That is basically using both EMIs and the household, basically the population census data. Next one is the further targeting of current strategy developed by the government, jointly developed by the government and the development partner to strengthen and equity need-based approaches. In the development of the educational equity index, basically were developed based on the outcome status of access, survival, and learning of the children. In the overall process, regarding the access, enrollment ratio was measured based on the dimension of gender, location, different caste and ethnicity, disabilities, and wealth and mother's education by using the current existing EMIs and the census data. Also, similarly, also for the survival, it was measured the survival rate from grade 1 to 8 by taking account the dimension of gender, location, Dalit, non-Dalit, that is basically the caste and ethnicity, and also the disabilities by using the EMIs data. For the learning part, it was measured the SLC pass rate, which is the grade 10 national examination results of the children by having the dimension of gender with the measuring the MOE EMIS data. And in the overall process, we look at the context and resource to assess the outcome of the children at the district level. The use of, next slide please, the use of the index at national level to inform national planning and budgeting, to identify districts in need of targeted support, that is basically resources, to reduce inequity in outcomes. Next one is identify those dimensions of inequity at the in ethnicity, gender, location, and other dimensions that are most pronounced to inform policy making. Next one is identify districts that have low outcomes and equity but higher than average resources that need more pedagogical support monitoring. Next one is identify outliers with high outcome and equity and low resources to document and share good practice. That means they out of the 75 districts, some of the districts they do have the very high outcomes compared to the resource allocation to other districts. So that will be the best practice to us to share with the other districts which have the high resources and low outcomes. At the district and sub-district level, to inform sub-district and local level planning and budgeting, that is best local level equity indexes are developed for targeted districts to inform analysis and local level equity strategy implementation plan. That this one is the, at the sub-district level. Next slide, please. This is the map of Nepal, which is plotted this ranking of the 75 districts. It also shows that there are different types of the disparities based on the analysis, based on the index developed for the 75 districts at national level. Next slide, please. Next slide. This is the one of the disparities ranking of the district based on the caste and ethnicity and geography, and also the gender. Out of the 75 districts, there are, as we discussed in previously, we did analysis by taking the different dimension and different diverse of the disparities. Based on the caste and ethnicity, out of 75 districts, there are 42 districts that have the disparities in the area of the caste and ethnicity. Similarly, 25 districts as per the geographical diversity, and also the gender, 8 districts based on the gender perspective. Now, next one is the, we also initiated in the data, under the Data Must Speak project to develop the school and the district profiles. That is basically, though it is not the new initiation in the Nepal context, but it is very much the important and also the new types of the initiation. Basically, the purpose of the school profile is to inform district and national level planning, and inform district and national level budgeting, and inform school improvement plan, that is we call the SIP in short, and improve accountability to parents and the wider school community. And the last one is the improve EMIS data reliability through increasing application. Here, since 2006 and 7, within the EMIS system, we have developed the school BDC and district report card, which is automatically generated in the EMIS system. That was initiated in 2007, but it was not intensively implemented at the local level. So that under this, the Data Must Speak project, we have reinitiated this implement the school and district profile. Next slide. This one is the one of the example that we have initiated the new school profile. This school profile is the dynamic. We call the dynamic school profile because once the district education office will import the school EMIS data in their software, it will be automatically changed. So that we call it the dynamic. Now it is in this inbuilt in the EMIS system. So it is going to be automatically generated. And regarding the district and BDC profile, we have already initiated and it is already embedded in the EMI system by having the key indicators at the district and BDC level. The next step for the school profile, jointly with the government and the UNICEF country office, we are going to pilot the school profile in 450 schools, including exploring of paper version, web.
Please move forward to another slide.
The next slide.
Next slide.
Next.
Okay, again next.
Next.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. The next step, piloting testing in 450 schools, including exploring of paper version, web-based dissemination and development of app followed by assessment. The next one is finalize the dissemination strategy. And third one is embedding the school report card in IEMIS. The last one is scale up based on assessment and dissemination strategy. Regarding the equity index, there is a plan to development of the local level equity strategy implementation plan to inform the local level plan contributing to the national results. The next one is integrating the equity index in EMIS. The last one is exploring the use of the equity strategy for further need-based resource allocation. For the rest, our joint secretary will continue.
Okay, please go next slide. Yeah, lesson whatever we learned from the Data Must Speak initiative in the conclusion, and it has been very much effective because it was planned over sufficiently long time period, and it was allowed to mobilize for the expert to establish different working relation, and especially it was more effective because it is developed jointly in country to fit the country context and priorities as well. And we can combine or we can utilize the international expertise and with the expert in our country expert by developing TA framework. Similarly, during the time we had a strong country development partners in UNICEF, which that ensured the ownership for the government of Nepal. And the achievement of the DMS Data Must Speak, it has the achievement which is contributed to key strategies in the development of new education sector plan. Just we have able to develop the school sector development plan, which was 7 years periodic, long-term periodic plan. We can develop that plan. And we give the lesson from the DMS initiative, especially for the further strengthening which is needed for us, especially for the Nepal is now. Please go another slide. Next slide, please. Okay. Yeah, now Nepal is in the changing context, the governance reforming process from central government to federal system. So we receive the lesson from this initiative. We need to adapt a new context. Use of the data is an opportunity to strengthen the local governance, and we realize that the further strengthen is necessary for the institutional arrangement and capacity of the educational management information system, and more direct or earlier engagement and exchange of experience and knowledge between the key staffs, those who are involved across the participating countries will have been useful. So we found or we learned from this initiative in this our local context. Thank you. If any queries, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vaikunta, Prashad Aryal, and Mr. Shankar Thapa joining us from Kathmandu for this also extremely interesting presentation, especially what will be very interesting for the follow-up discussion is likely to be your specific focus on equity and how can you use data to monitor equity and hopefully also to address inequity in terms of access and achievement of education outcomes. Due to the time, we have to move immediately to Manila, to Mr. Dexter Pante, who has been waiting patiently. And apologies because I believe, Mr. Pante, that you were earlier on in the order of presentations originally planned. Mr. Dexter Pante, Chief of School Effectiveness Division, Ministry of Education, Republic of the Philippines. Are you online?
Yes, can you hear me?
Excellent. We can hear you very well.
Can you hear me?
Before you start, let me also just say to the audience, you can already send your questions via the YouTube chat function, via email, or in any other way that you want. And I also think that later it will be interesting for the colleagues from Lusaka, the colleagues from Kathmandu, and the colleagues from Manila to maybe also ask questions to each other to exchange some views on the experiences of Data Must Speak in their respective countries. Mr. Pante, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for joining us.
Okay, good afternoon, or rather good evening from the Philippines, and good day to everyone. Before I start, I'd like to thank UNICEF, World Bank, Global Partnership in Education for making this webinar possible. So our study with UNICEF is enhancing the distribution of special hardship allowance for public school teachers. So our country is an archipelago, so we have around 103 million inhabitants. 44% of the population live in urban areas. So of the 103 million, 36 million aged 0 to 17 are considered children. So as you can see, we are a very diverse country, and a lot of our schools are located in island schools, mountainous areas, highly urban settings, and very diverse school settings. Next slide, please. So, considering all the public schools in the Philippines, 71% are from public schools, and then the remaining are privately managed schools. So, in our governance structure, we support schools through the division offices. So the division offices provide technical assistance and instructional supervision support to our schools. But as you can see in the table presented in that slide, schools are very far from the division offices. For the elementary schools, for example, it takes about 2 hours to get to the division office, and then you have to spend about $3 to go there. So it's timely and at the same time very costly to go to the division office to ask for technical support. Next slide, please. So the background of this study is that we have partnered with UNICEF to provide us technical assistance in the use of our EMIS data. And DepEd has a very strong ownership to this assistance because we have identified the area on special hardship allowance as the support area where UNICEF assistance could be very much appreciated. And the special hardship allowance is provided by the Magna Carta for public school teachers, which provides that a special hardship allowance for teachers exposed to hardship, meaning those experiencing difficulty in commuting and those experiencing other hazards peculiar to the place of employment are entitled to at least 25% of their monthly salary. And under our national budget circular released in 2007, the grants for special hardship allowance should be provided to those in hardship post, multi-grade teachers, mobile teachers, and alternative learning system coordinators. Hardship posts are characterized by difficulty in commuting, transport inaccessibility, difficulty of situations such as calamity-prone area, those areas where hazards to life are present, inconvenience of travel. Next slide. So despite the presence of a special hardship allowance policy, we still encounter problems of experienced teachers in remote location or isolated schools. So what the present practice is, division offices interpret the special hardship guidelines, and the interpretation varies from division to division. Sometimes the interpretation is exclusively made on distance. In other areas, teachers receive same amount regardless of the base salary. So the interpretation of the guideline is very diverse, so there's no uniformity on it. So what we did now is to work with UNICEF and come up with objective and reliable measure of identifying hardship posed. So then, next slide, please. Next slide. So the objective of our research is to mitigate the lack of teachers, especially the experienced ones in hardship posed, addressing inequity in access and quality. Consider various factors contributing to teacher hardship. Develop a teacher hardship index that captures various factors in a single measure that is statistically sound and objective. And using that hardship index, identify those hardship posed. Translate the... Sorry, can you go back to the objective?
We're changing it.
Previous slide, please.
Responding. Sorry, is it blank? 1 second, please. We're just trying to solve something. Apologies, Mr. Pante. It seems that the screen is frozen. We are trying to get it.
Yep. Yeah, it will take a second.
Yeah. Just... Yes, that's it. Thank you. Let's. We're back.
Thank you. Going back to the objective, so we want to mitigate the lack of teachers, especially the experienced ones in hardship posed. So the idea there is if we provide teachers an allowance for the difficulty they're experiencing, they are more inclined to stay in those remote areas. Second one is to consider other factors contributing to teacher hardship. In our focus group discussion with teachers and division offices, we found out that while we provide other criteria, the interpretation of the division offices when they apply the guidelines is based mostly on distance. So they don't consider other factors that are relevant to hardship. Third, develop a hardship index to capture various factors in a single measure in a statistically sound and objective manner. So using that index, we can now identify objectively and without bias hardship posed, and then translate those index commensurate to special hardship allowance, and then our undersecretary, in fact, wants this special hardship allowance be applied to the 2017 budget on special hardship allowance, and then come up with a new guidelines on the allocation of special hardship allowance for teachers. Next slide, please. So, in developing the special hardship index, we form a technical working group composed of planning, service, school effectiveness office, division rather, the human resources, finance, and learning delivery. So there's a very high ownership to this project. We also consulted the group of teachers from Metro Manila. This is a very highly urbanized city. And then we also went to provinces like Region 12 in Mindanao to identify factors that contribute to teacher hardship. We also did an online survey using SurveyMonkey to get other perspective that we haven't received from the focus group discussion. We also mined our basic education information system for data, and then we also got the data on poverty from our Philippine Statistical Authority to identify the determinants of hardship. After identifying the factors that affect hardship of teachers, we came up with a composite index that combines the different sources of hardship and available data sources to calculate the hardship score, ranging from 0 to 1 for every school. And we also did field testing to get a feel if this hardship index really captures the difficulty being experienced by our teachers. Next slide, please. So we ran a multivariate regression analysis, and in the slide that you can, in the slide presented to you, these are all the factors that are statistically significant in affecting the percentage of teachers 2 and above staying in the school. So from that pie, you could see that the weights of travel time contributes a lot to the hardship score of schools, followed by travel costs to the division, and then human violence. So using all this data from the school, you could compute the hardship index for each school. Next slide, please. Next slide. So, no, previous slide. Sorry about that. Previous slide, please. Okay. So this is now we did a segmentation of the hardship index, and for each segment, there's a corresponding special hardship amount payout. So for schools with hardship index 0.35 to 0.39, they are entitled to 10%. And for those with 0.4 up to 0.49, they're entitled to 15% special hardship allowance payout. And then the 5.5 to 0.59, 20%. And then 0.6 and up, we will be providing them 25% of their basic salary. So 15% of public schools and 7% of public secondary schools will benefit from the special hardship allowance. Next slide, please. So what are the next steps? Just this afternoon, we have presented this special hardship allowance to one of our undersecretary, and he was very receptive to this initiative. So he advised us to immediately draft the guidelines for this special hardship allowance, and then route it out to the DepEd Executive Committee. We also need to discuss these new guidelines to the Department of Budget and Management, because this was the office that issued the National Budget Circular that currently governs the allocation of special hardship allowance. We have to communicate also to our field offices because of this new formula. We expect that there will be some schools that will be excluded from this new formula. And then we also need to quality assure the data, because currently there are some gaps in our data. And then in 2018, reassess again and adjust the index in the light of new data, and then do some impact analysis to determine whether we are making a difference for those schools receiving special hardship allowance. By the way, aside from this work, the DMS team is also supporting us in the automation of our school reports, similar to the school from Zambia, Nepal. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pante. That was a fantastic presentation. Really, I think today we've been particularly fortunate in this webinar to have had three sets of panelists who really very clearly explained what Data Must Speak does in their countries. And it was interesting to see the different foci When we look at Lusaka, at the Republic of the Zambia, we see that the focus is really on what can communities and what can schools do with the different data. Then we look at Nepal and we see that equity was the focus. And in the case of Philippines, you're really focusing on hardship. So thank you very much. So quite a lot of questions have come in, questions and remarks. So Mr. Pante, also please stay with us for those questions. I will go through them in order, and not all questions need necessarily to be responded to by yourselves. Some questions, like this first question, is really more of an internal question. I do want to read it out for everybody to be aware of it, but we will pass that on to the appropriate counterpart. Even if your question is not being answered in this particular session, an answer will be provided and will be sent to you after this webinar. So please keep sending them in. We have got Darlington Muzari from Academy Repost, who said, we are building an online integrated school management system. Apologies. For schools, our system supports the Data Must Speak initiative. We would like a school in Zambia to pilot our system. How do we go about it? No need to answer this question in this webinar. We will post it to Mr. Musonda and his team so that a contact may be established. A second question is more of a remark, and it would maybe also be interesting for some of you to reflect on it. This is Dr. Cleese from the University of Maryland here in the United States, saying, I know that the intention is good, but the name Data Must Speak is unfortunate. Good researchers will tell you that data never speaks, says Dr. Cleese. Data are always interpreted from a certain perspective. So what data to collect, how to repost it, and so on, depends on your point of view and can be quite a controversial decision. This is rather a remark than a question. If you would like to reflect on it in the round that we're going to go to now in terms of responses, then please do so. We have got a question for all panelists here from Mr. Jean-Jacques Schul, who is asking, what are the unit costs, either per school and or per child who has been schooled, of these EMIS programs? And that would be something interesting for the panelists to reflect on. And then we've got another set of questions, but let us start with this particular question. What are the unit costs? When you're responding from Lusaka, Kathmandu, and Manila, it would be really great if Mr. Musonda could also ask a question to the participants from Kathmandu, and when Mr. Prashat Aryal could also ask a question to Mr. Pante, and if Mr. Pante could also ask a question to the representatives from Zambia. So please reflection on the unit cost, and one question to the other panelists, please. Mr. Musonda, would you like to start?
On the unit cost, I think at the moment we haven't computed that. There was an attempt by the ministry to come up with a unit cost for learners in primary and secondary school. It wasn't conclusively done. So at the moment, the ministry does not have a unit cost for the learners at different levels of education. But it would be interesting. I think it's worth to be followed up.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Mr. Musonda, would you happen to have a question for our colleagues in Nepal?
Yeah.
Well, not at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, that's well understood. Mr. Prashat Aryal, could you say something about unit costs, and would you have a question for the panelists from Philippines and or from Zambia?
Okay, thank you very much. In Nepal, we have not clarified the unit cost for the EMIS data, and it is not decided. Some sort of budget will be allocated for the collection of the data, educational management data, but not decided as per of the unit or as per of the number of the students. And I have a question to Zambia colleagues. Thank you for their presentation. and I think it is very new for us about the community profile. And in community profile, what types of communities information now practicing for collection, and are only for the literacy, and others are school availability, out of school, and only education related data, or other data as well. And next, in the linking with the same question, are community people also use such kind of community profile in their community for the, especially for the development of the educational sector? This is my question for Zambia colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Prashad Aryal. Before we move back to Zambia, let us first briefly go to Philippines. Mr. Pante, can you say something about unit costs, and would you have any question for our presenters in Nepal and or Zambia?
Good evening again. We have unit cost per learner, but unfortunately, we're having the conference in UNICEF office and it's evening, so I don't have the data with me. But I would be glad to have the email of the one who posed the question, and probably we could provide him the data.
Fantastic. That will be very good. Okay, so now we have got some questions over here for specific countries. We've got questions for the representatives of Nepal and of the Philippines. But first, Mr. Musondak, would you be able to address Mr. Prashad Aryal's question about the community profiles, about their uses? Could you say a little bit more about it? Because it is indeed a very interesting way of using data must speak.
Yes, thank you very much. With regard to the community profiles, we have observed that communities are stakeholders in the provision of school, in the respective schools where they send their children. But we have realized that the communities play a vital role. They provide the required resources to support the schools. In certain communities, they mobilize materials to construct additional infrastructure at the school. So there's quite a lot of involvement from the community. But however, there hasn't been a feedback mechanism, especially from the school to the communities where they serve. For example, we feel schools should be accountable to the communities where they are serving. We feel schools should get to the communities, and the communities should demand to see the performance of the schools where they are sending their children and the schools which they are supporting. So the community profiles are meant to bridge the gap between the communities and the schools. The communities to take the school management accountable to the resources that are available at the school, to the quality of education being provided to the learners. So that is the basis of these community profiles, and we feel it will provide that important linkage between the community so that the communities can also participate in the management of the school. Not so sure if my colleagues are satisfied with that, or that has clarified their question. So that's what I would say with regard to the usage of community profiles. And what we have done is make them very simple, so that some communities which are not very educated can use the pictorial images we have used, so that they can quickly understand and get what the communities are presenting with regard to the school. So basically that's what we are focusing on with regard to community schools, community profiles rather.
That's highly interesting. At this point, two questions for the representatives from the Nepal government on this occasion. We are getting more questions in all the time, so a concise answer would be appreciated. This one is from Muriel Poisson of the UNESCO International Institute of Educational Planning. What were the main problems met during the implementation of the former school repost initiative developed in Nepal by the government? And here's another question for Nepal. What mechanisms are used to ensure data accuracy? Mr. Prashad Aryal, could you speak to that?
Could you again repeat the question, please? First question.
What were the main problems met during the implementation of the former
school report card?
Apologies, the former school report card initiative developed by in Nepal. Apologies for the misreading at the first occasion. It's the school report card initiative.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me start from the second question about the data accuracy. Regarding the data accuracy, as the government of Nepal has initiated the more targeted intervention from the very beginning of the implementation of SSRP, that is School Sector Reform Plan, and currently in the School Sector Development Plan. Because of that, we initiated to improve in the current EMI system. That means we have been collecting and managing the. We have been collected and managed the EMI data in manual procedure. That is, from the center level, standardize the EMI's school census form was developed. Based on that, the school and district education office they were collected and reported to the center level. But because of the requirement of the SSRP and SSDP for the targeted intervention, since last 2 years, we have been we have stopped the manual procedure of the data collection system and started and established the electronic-based IEMIS system. That means integrated educational management information system. That means each individual school they do have now their own EMIS, electronic-based EMIS that capture the original record of the school. That is individual level information of the students and teachers and other information of the school that is exist at the school level. That means we have been focusing to the management of the information at the school level and the accuracy reporting of the school information to the district and the central level. So based on this, now it is the second year. All 35,222 schools they do have their electronic-based EMIS, and currently up to now, all schools they already reported the current school year their information. So next one is we do have also the mechanism within the implementation of the SSDP, independent verification of the EMIS. That is also that is already planned in the process of the development of SSDP. The first round of the independent verification is already completed, and the next round will be after 2 years. Within the SSDP, fifth year of the SSDP, we will have 3 times of the independent verification of the EMIS. So these are the mechanisms to make the accuracy of the EMIS. And about the problem of the school report card, it is basically about content of the WhatsApp of the content of the information will be included in the school report card, and basically it is because the difficulty is that its implementation mechanism, because we do have the many lacking of the infrastructure at the school level, and even at the district education office also there are lack of the the color printing of the school report card. So that these are the things that there are many other things that that are the problem to proper implementation of the school report card in the previous time. Now we do have the jointly having the initiation and going to have the pilot test to make it more efficient utilization of the school report card in the future.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can I just ask for the participants who have joined recently to put their microphones on mute? Please mute your microphones so as to allow the translators to do their work. We are coming to the end of this session, but we have got a few more questions that we think it's important to address. But given the fact that we've got very little time left, conciseness in your responses would be extremely highly appreciated. We've got a question for the Philippines, for UNICEF, and for Zambia. Mr. Pante, we've got a question from Mr. Palawan, saying we commend the Philippines Department of Education for creating more opportunities for inclusive education. I believe that this remark is really about the extent to which the Data Must Speak initiative in the Philippines would help support inclusion in education. Mr. Pante, could you say a few words about that briefly, please?
Yeah, one of our priority tasks is inclusive education. So that's one of the priority agenda of our secretary. That's a short answer.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Pante. That was indeed very concise. Daniel, I hope that you are also still with us, because we have got a question for you, for UNICEF. Daniel, are you still there? Okay, if our UNICEF colleague is not here anymore, we will make sure that this question gets passed on to him. A question from Mr. Jean-Jacques Schul, again saying that ownership is key. How is UNICEF helping with ownership of this initiative? Ownership, obviously, by the national authorities and the other levels. Probably the initiative of Zambia is a good idea of giving ownership to the community level. Would it not be better to work through the local civil society organizations in the field? Is the question that Mr. Jean-Jacques Schul is asking. Daniel, if you're here, can you answer? And if you're not with us anymore, then we will make sure that this question gets passed on. Okay. And then the final question for today, and then we're going to wrap up, is for our colleagues from the Zambia. Mr. Musharraf Tanim is asking, are all school or community profiles distributed to all of the schools and all of the communities, or is it only selectively done? I believe that you distributed the school profiles to 8,900 schools, so my understanding is that it's to almost all schools, given the fact that you've got 8,800 primary schools and 850 secondary schools. But Mr. Musonda, if you can say something about which schools and which communities get those profiles and which don't, that would be fantastic. And then we'll start to wrap it up.
Okay. Thank you very much. With regard to the profiles, at the moment we have developed primary school profiles, and not all primary schools received not all primary schools received the school profiles, because some are not exam center schools.
Right.
Okay, so the profiles are for those examination center schools, because we are reporting also on examination results. So what it is some schools do not have the examination center status. So those, quite a few of them are excluded. They are not included in the current school profiles that we have. But what we have done, for those which are not examination centers, we have produced profiles, but they do not have examination results on them. So, like for primary schools, let me maybe just correct the impression. It's like literally almost all the primary schools are covered. But the only difference is that those examination center schools have examination data on them to show for the past 3 years how they've performed as a school in relation to the district performance averages. So they have, but for the non-examination center primary schools, they do not have examination results, but they have the other pieces of information which are available on those exam center schools. Now, with regard to the secondary school profiles, these are now under development. That's our next, it's amongst the next steps. It's also to incorporate and develop school profiles for the secondary schools. Then for the community profiles, these are meant to be distributed to the communities through the PTA arrangement. Schools are supported by the communities and their PTA arrangement, and we want to use the PTA arrangement to give them these profiles. The PTA for those schools to have these profiles so that they can share amongst the community as well, so that they are able to hold accountable the schools where the children or the schools which they are supporting as communities through PTAs. So that is the status with regard to the distribution and the which schools have school profiles available at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you instead very much, Mr. Musonda. With that, very interesting conclusion. We are coming to the end of this webinar and we're going towards wrapping this up. Let me just reiterate that within 2 weeks, everybody who is registered for this seminar will receive documentation related to it, as well as the recording. This whole webinar has been recorded, as well as answers to any questions that we have received but have not been able to address for the moment. For my part, just to say that it was very interesting to see the different foci, Zambia with its community profiles and school profiles, and making sure that this actually gets fed to the decentralized levels of the education system, not just keeping it in the Ministry of Education. And that really speaks to Daniel's metaphor of setting data free, isn't it? And setting data free into the country, in this case the Republic of Zambia. In the case of Nepal, the focus on equity, in yes, trying to look at the data, but see what do those data say for example, the hill communities, other communities, Muslim learners, other learners, etc. And finally, the Philippines with its focus on hardship. And then I think we also saw a few shared characteristics. I think that all three countries emphasized the importance of the use of the data must speak. The data must just not sit there. And the data must just not speak. We must also listen to the data. We should use them to make sure that they obtain value. And finally, some type of anchoring of the initiative within the different stakeholder communities. And finally, I think I can say for our colleagues here in GPE, it's always interesting to see how different member countries are also exchanging with one another, learning from one another experiences, which is extremely inspiring. With that, let me very much thank Mr. Daniel Kelly of UNICEF, Mr. Dexter Pante of the Republic of the Philippines, Mr. Bupe Musonda of the Republic of the Zambia, Mr. Vaikunta Prasad Aryal, and Mr. Shankar Tapa of the Republic of Nepal, as well as the team here, which consists of Chandrani Rai, Umet Partov, Victoria Egbetayo, Farid Tanai, Mary Nyingi, Sirtaj Kaur, and Livia Barton. Thank you very much. We hope to see you again at our next webinar, and wish you all best wishes for whatever is left of your day or the rest of the week. Thank you again. Ciao.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.